pop up here and I'll be able to tell. We'll soon find out. Ah, there you go. We're live, bro.
Boom.
You should
Boom, boom, boom.
That's just plugged out and that's one comment you are.
I mean, this is the most insipid, uninspiring election campaign that I've ever witnessed. Fucking. I mean, they really are taking us for fools now.
It's gonna hit Moses. Right, John. So what we should do is put the URL for this on your. You want to put it to your Twitter account? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Hold on a second. I'm going to copy this.
Will you tweet it to me, yeah?
I'll tweet it to you right now. If you just bear with me 1 second. John, why is here? If you tweet that, you can say, anybody got any questions or whatever.
So have you put it on your Twitter account now?
I've messaged you the link.
Right, or I can just retweet you and I'll quote tweet you.
Right.
So let me.
Hold on, I'll put a minute. Anyone has
comments.
Questions. Microphone's knackered. Quite like that, it's knackered. Got dodgy microphone. Chat with John White. Live chat. Put live chat.
Do you want to put my Twitter handle with
Yeah, I will, yeah. Sorry, mate. Say live chat with John White.
On politics. Anyone with questions, please join us. Just ask people to join us. Feel free to join. About to go live with Bonnie Prince Joe. Is this coming through on Twitter as well, or just on?
No, just on YouTube. Let's see what. Just tweet that.
Right, you've sent me the URL, eh? Right.
Live chat with John White. I'll have a look here. Dodgy mic. Right, I think that's working now. John, how you doing?
Not too bad. Given events, not too bad, as well as can be expected.
For real. Just feeling really sick. Right, done that. Tell me about the book, John.
Published in May. Tells the story, as the title, self-explanatory. Tells the story of this prolonged tragedy through the eyes of two rival combatants in the hours ticking down to Israel's ground invasion of Gaza back in 2014, Operation Protective Edge. And so there's a member of the Golani Brigade and there's a member of the Palestinian Resistance, Omar, and the narrative shifts back and forth between the two of them, telling their story through their eyes, how they got to this position, seminal moments in their childhood. Gabriel's an American from Brooklyn, American Jew who converts to Zionism, is in juvenile hall for gang crime. And Omar's life's been nothing but occupation and struggle, and family members killed and martyred. And I think that it's interesting, the genesis of this book, because when I first wrote it about 2 years ago, and I started sending it out, nobody really wanted to touch it because of the Palestinian character. Because in the book, not only did I humanise the Palestinians, I humanise a member of the Palestinian Resistance. We're used to, in this news culture and political culture, having these young men with small arms and big hearts, I would say. They're just discarded as, improper nouns like terrorists. They're not flesh and blood, they don't have hopes and dreams, they don't have a story, they don't have a backstory. So I wanted to address that. And my initial thought was to make it just purely through the eyes of the Palestinian, because we all know the Zionists have such huge influence and sway in our culture. But it didn't work as a piece of writing early on. I needed that juxtaposition between the two of them to give it sort of life, otherwise it just become polemical. And interestingly, in the process of writing it, I thought automatically, I assumed at the start that I would find the Zionist character hard to write because of my own politics, being pro-Palestinian. But this character, Gabriel, was actually easier to write because he's westernised, and so am I, on a cultural level. And I'm very familiar with the States because I lived there for a number of years, so I know the place, I know the topography. The Palestinian character was harder to write as a character, not through the politics, but or the history, but as a character, because I'm not part of that culture. So it was good. It was a real burned a few brain cells on it. People will judge if I've done a good job, because I had to make sure that the Zionist story was put as forthrightly and vigorously as I could, even though I reject it, their argument for why Israel should be the way it is and they've got the right to that land, etc., etc. So yeah, it was a interesting journey. It'll be interesting to see what people think, and I'm going to be holding a couple of book events in the coming weeks and months.
Do you know where you're going to do them yet? Have you got any?
I'm going to do one in Edinburgh here, and I'm going to get one in London. And there's talks about doing one down in the Borders where I currently reside.
Right.
Maybe do a fundraiser. Make it a fundraiser, you know.
And what you're saying, you started writing it a couple of years ago?
I wrote it first wrote it 4 years ago, and then I was sending it out and I was getting nowhere, and then I got an offer from an Italian publisher who really liked it, but I didn't like what the deal, you know, if you've ever published a book, it's, you know, the writer gets, you know,
buttons,
smallest piece of the pie.
Yeah.
No, that it's a political project, but you know, you've got to make sure you're not getting rammed, as it were. And then I had a publisher in London who was interested. I think the landscape's changed because of what's going on this year, the horrific events. And to my mind, there's not a book out there or all out there that's tackling this issue. And that's quite astounding to me, but it's no surprise. Because, let's be clear, anybody that touches anything and we're pro-Palestinian slant, it's been career suicide for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So what happened to David Miller, you know, the professor at Bristol University? He got cancelled. Anybody who dares to humanise the Palestinians or goes beyond a certain parameter in their support for the Palestinians, because it's always been controlled by the other side through the lobby. Fuck that, you know. This book doesn't hold to that at all. So, you know, we're at a time when you've got to be really fearless in the sense of intellectually assert the right to say it, whatever it is. What did Rosa Luxemburg say? The most revolutionary thing you can do is loudly proclaim what is actually happening. And so we see what fucking genocide's happening. And yet still, you know, you get in the whole sort of that spectre of anti-Semitism, anti-Semite, if you dare cross that line, defined by the Zionist lobby through their various institutions, you know. Look what they've done to the Labour Party. They control the Labour Party. They control Starmer's Labour as Israel's Labour.
Yeah.
I mean, Starmer and Streeter and all these Labour friends of Israel, you know, they're bought and paid for shills of an apartheid state.
This is the reality of our polity.
It's totally debased our political culture. I mean, I was on a phone-in show with LBC with that Tom Swarbrick. You ever read him?
No.
Just a centrist mannequin. And it was about when that former minister, Dean Duncan Smith, he was a junior foreign minister, and they were trying to destroy him because he was actually coming out and saying what was going on with the settlements, etc. And he was forced to resign. And I went on to say, well, the guy's absolutely right. He came on and says these are extremists talking about Gaza. Can't remember his name. He's a junior foreign minister. And Al Jazeera did that documentary about the lobby, where they were
with Luke Akehurst and all that.
And they were trying to undermine pro-Palestinian politicians and stuff from the Israeli embassy. That was an operation they were running. So it's all been psyops for years and years and years. But I think even they now have lost control of the narrative in the course of the last 9 months of slaughter in Gaza. You know, I think no matter how many times they tell us that the sky is green, we can see that the sky is blue, actually blood red.
No, totally.
Figuratively speaking.
100%. Tell me, we're all kind of 2 seconds, just get this thing. We're all having to be spectators now to this general election farce that we're all kind of. But Gaza is a major if there is an issue that is dominating it, it is definitely there within it. You know, obviously they've turned it. They've got the right now that have hijacked it, and it's become an issue about immigration fundamentally. You know, but
well, what was
the other issue really is Gaza. Really, I think these are the two things. You know what I mean?
What was it? That famous line from W. Yeats's classic poems to the Second Coming: "Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, and the worst are full of passionate intensity." That's the times we're living in, and the politics does not meet the moment, and that's frightening. This is not serious politics now. This is a fag end of late capitalism in crisis.
Yeah.
And we're getting a surplus of flag waving and patriotism and nationalism, and a deficit of serious politics concerning the escalating problems we've got with housing, homelessness, NHS waiting lists. And this migration crisis is now being elevated to the status of a material force, and Nigel Farage is pushing the Tories to the right on this issue. And it's now it's a Dutch auction about who can bash the migrants and who can be hardest on the boats. Nobody's talking about the fucking private jets that come in with people wielding investment portfolios. We're worried about poor bedraggled people crossing the channel with stuff in poly bags. So the lack of class politics is an absolute lacuna in our political culture right now. And beyond class politics, anti-capitalist politics. The word capitalism has not been mentioned once, not even by some of the left parties. You know, and we need a politics, urgently need a politics that is unashamedly anti-capitalist, unashamedly anti-imperialist, unashamedly anti-corporation, and unashamedly anti-British state, given what the British state represents in truth. And this fucking Second War obscurantism and all these tropes about Churchill. You know, it's interesting to me, Bob. I'm a bit of history buff. The working class, when Churchill was alive in Britain, hated Churchill to the extent that the working class today worship him. That's how far we've regressed. When he used to go to the East End of London after a German bombing raid, he would get jeered. They turned over his car in Dundee.
Yeah, but again, you know, again, this becomes a question of, you know, what constitutes, what defines the working class in that respect. You know what I mean? Because we have these kind of we have an altering and shifting concept of what the working class is. You know what I mean? You now have you know, you'll find a lot of kind of bourgeois leftists will kind of embrace the idea that they're working class because of their particular relations to, you know,
means of production.
Yeah, and they seem to have taken it's a very American thing. It's how the Americans sort of define, or I'm working class because I'm a barista and, you know, I sell my labour sort of thing. That's where the sort of concept of being working class sort of starts then. I think that's
well, obviously there's a difference between a working class in itself and a working class that's for itself. The latter is a class that's politically conscious. So you can be politically working class and your politics can be defined by your class, but you can be socially working class but your politics are not defined, and that's cognitive dissonance, and we would call that false. Well, I would call that false consciousness, right? But it's a very important topic because obviously the ruling class, they are conscious. That's why they're the ruling class, and that's why we're not. And the middle class are their bag servants, the political class. That's their servants. They serve their interests, even though they try and persuade us to believe that they serve our interests, and they call it a national interest. It's not a national interest. It's an interest of the dominant class that's being presented as a national interest, and it's the extent to which they're successful in doing that they would maintain the status quo. I think I think apathy will be the winner of this election. I think it will be a historically low turnout. I would not be surprised if it's down near around 50%. And a non-vote, to my mind, has always been a political statement in itself, whether it's conscious or unconscious. I'll be spoiling my ballot for the first time. I've literally got nobody that I would be persuaded to vote for. Unfortunately, the candidates that are standing on the issue of Gaza, which is the issue of the moment, I would not be surprised if they don't break through to the extent that we would want or hope, because it's been going on so long now, uninterruptedly, unrelenting, and I think for a lot of people it's become a backdrop, and they've become desensitized, and that's just how it works. I mean, in 2005, you may recall, when the carnage in Iraq was at its height, the sectarian civil war, the slaughter, and everybody knew by then that the war had been entered to on the basis of a pack of lies by Blair and co. Blair still got re-elected. He got re-elected.
No, that's true.
Albeit on a lower majority and a lower turnout, but he still got elected. So the problem, I think, and I'm going to be critical of the sort of anti-war movement, is the lack of joining the dots between foreign policy and class oppression at home. And so it's now being presented as actually an issue for people who are morally outraged by the slaughter, understandably, or Muslims. And that's wrong. And that's losing the political narrative that could get the most amount of people engaged. I.e. all this money being spent on weapons that are sent to Israel could be spent investing in working class communities and community centres and the NHS and housing, education, etc. We have crumbling public services, crumbling infrastructure, and yet there's a never-ending pot of money, bottomless pot of money for war and war making. So it's an incredibly fraught time, and the lack of an anti-capitalist politics, unashamedly so, is opened the door to the rise of conspiracy theory. I mean, that's become a cottage industry, conspiracy theory. And I don't blame people. I mean, people are looking for answers because they know that they can see around them that nothing's working, and there's a huge disconnect between what they're being told is the truth and what isn't, and what their own lived experience of the truth is. And so there's a vacuum, and it's being filled by the populist right, and they share a lot of the tropes of conspiracy theorists, and that's because of a lack of a left that's organised and is able to sort of give the answers that people need to the problems that they face on a daily basis and what they're seeing on the TV screen vis-a-vis foreign policy. And I mean, I think we could have boots on the ground in the next year if Starmer gets in power. I think he is a mediocrity, a mendacious mediocrity, coughed up from the bowels of the British state, and who will be its most loyal servant. I consider him to be more dangerous than Tony Blair.
I went to see, I've seen the sounds of it going, I went to see David Jameson from Conor was in a talk in Glasgow last week, when I'm going to start this week, and that was his position, that we're in an inevitable march to war, basically.
It's like pre-First World War rhetoric.
Exactly.
There's nobody talking about, since Corbyn was removed from the stage, and he was removed by the establishment.
And with no basically class defences there politically,
no.
Then we're talking about the poorest and most vulnerable.
No.
Being basically turning the cabin fodder, basically.
Exactly. And that'll be the way to deal with our poverty problem, by sending them off to war. Once we've run out of Ukrainians to die in our wars for Western hegemony in Ukraine, it'll be up to our own young men who'll be sent. I mean, we're hearing now talk of conscription. That was a kite that flew a few months ago. National service. They're trying to rally us round the flag, and escalating levels of cruelty at home and belligerence when it comes to our external enemy, and the sort of hysteria over Putin and over Hamas. Is Hamas a terrorist organisation? Do you condemn October 7? These have become the litmus test for establishment shills and establishment stooges. And when you see the likes of Piers Morgan, to name it one, he claims to hold to a neutral position on the issue of Gaza. He's in it for the clicks, obviously, but when he brings pro-Palestine voices on, they're interrogated, but pro-Israel voices are interviewed. And that's because of the internalisation of white supremacist tropes, I contend. That, Palestinian, there's a racial hierarchy, which the world is underpinned by far more than democracy or human rights, and that westernised Israeli Jews belong at the top of that hierarchy beside us, and the Palestinians and Arabs in general, people of the global south overall, belong at the bottom.
Let me just ask, I think because we've both been quite critical of the trauma and pro-Palestine or the anti-Zionist protesting that's been there. It's essentially the bourgeois movement and those same people essentially that are going to reinstall some form of a bourgeois bully for us to have to be sort of patronised by. There's a big problem with that, isn't there?
Well, it's good that they're having them, but over and above that, I've been up close and personal with that kind of stuff before, and they don't want to take any chances. What the method of organisation is nowhere near the magnitude of the moment. They're not willing to fill the jails. they're not willing to create a political crisis. You've got hundreds of thousands of people on the streets of London, and you're still seeing protesters being arrested by the police, and they're not even trying to intervene. I mean, there is a real problem. It's lapsed into pacifism. I mean, the prime movers, it's in their interest to keep it going the way it is. They get to make their speech in front of the crowd, they get their dopamine fix, and then it's rinse and repeat. I've been there, I'm sorry. Egos in the room. You know, I had these arguments with Stop the War back in the days of Iraq, and it was always the radicals who had to take a back seat to the moderates, it seems. They're going for width at the expense of depth. They're not reaching people with serious politics to let them understand why this should count for people here, not just Muslims, not just people who have family over there, not just people who have got time on their hands to go on these protests or the means to go on them. Why should it count for people in low income communities? Gaza, what did Malcolm X say? You can't understand what's going on in Mississippi if you don't understand what's going on in the Congo. And that holds true today. A foreign policy rooted in war and imperialism rests on foundations of social and economic injustice at home.
Totally. Tell me, while speaking both, we know, we see this complete and utter failure, at a governmental level, at a political level, at a party political level. But there's also, fundamentally, this is a failure of the left. You know,
Aye.
we're experiencing a failure of the left, and those who have presided over the left. It's on them. So we've got a lot of egos on the left that have, been happily. You know what I mean?
You know, there's an old saying. I'll paraphrase it now. You don't appreciate what you have until it's gone. And I'm thinking back to when I was an activist with the Scottish Socialist Party, back in the mid-noughties. Functioning branches in every town and city. In city they had multiple branches. Councillors, community organisers, MSPs, packed out conferences, packed out events, significant presence on the streets, heralded across the European left as a model. And yeah, I mean, that, to me, that I thought, this is normal, this is always going to be here. And the fact that it's not now is really telling now. We all know, obviously we all know what happened, we don't have to go into that, but I've got a strong memory. I was actually thinking about this at my high point with the Scottish Socialist Party. There was always this dynamic tension in the party between the people who believed in movementism, the movements preceded, and people who focused on party building, structures and contesting elections. And there was a wonderful dynamic tension when that was good, but then it sort of turned in on itself. And the most significant moment of that for me was, were you at the Make Poverty History March in 2005? It was a sort of culmination of the
that's right, yeah.
And I don't know if you recall, but the organisers, it was Oxfam, and Bono and fucking Geldof.
Yeah.
But the organisers, Oxfam, wanted everybody to wear white on the march as a gesture. And that catalysed a debate within the Scottish Socialist Party, because a significant group says, no, we should wear red. We're socialists. We understand that if you want to make poverty history, you have to make capitalism history. And the people on the other side, which is more like, I would say more like the academic left in this party, and the Socialist Worker Party people and Stop the War, they were saying, no, we have to respect the organisers. We can't isolate ourselves. And it was quite a fierce debate. And I went on the side of those who said we should merge in and wear white. That was a mistake. And I'll tell you why. I was ahead of the SSP bloc that were in red, and just as we got to the end of Princess Street, we were going to turn left up Lothian Road to head to the Meadows. And I looked back, and the SSP bloc in red looked absolutely magnificent, with the red flags and all the rest of it. And I thought, that's not just on the level of optics, that's on the level of consciousness.
Right, okay.
Why should we why should we sublimate our politics if we believe we have the answer to the problems caused by capitalism and unfettered capitalism? And they were right. And I hope somebody's got a picture of that, because that was a brilliant sight. And things sort of went down after that. But there was hundreds, and I think there was about 2,000 on that march. It was a really impressive sight to behold. So we lack that now. We lack that UK wide, and obviously a lot of bandwidth was understandably expended on the Corbyn project. But that just obviously we know what happened there. He was not unelectable. He was made unelectable after 2017 when they gave the establishment a fright. And then in Scotland, a lot of banment's been exerted on the cause of independence, and that's flailed on the rocks of devolutionism. Now we've got it's technocrats of the world unite. You know, John Swinney, Ed Davey.
Somebody's put a comment in the other night. I think I've got 7 years, and somebody says my mother dislikes Corbyn. And when I queried her on what policies drove her to that anger, she could not really answer me, but she reads the Daily Mail and the Daily Express every day.
That's it.
Power of media, like, you know, so it's...
Well, what did I mean? I kind of thought Malcolm X says, if you're not careful, the newspapers are obviously hating the people being oppressed,
yeah,
and loving the people doing the oppressing.
Yeah.
And they really went for Corbyn, because before 2017 he was a figure of fun, of ridicule. They weren't laughing after 2017 when he came within 2,400 votes of entering in Downing Street. And I really think the temperature was whipped up to such a high level that I wouldn't have been surprised if the establishment would have seriously considered a coup d'etat.
A coup, yeah. There was the famous, that great, a very British coup. Remember that?
That's
yeah.
right. Aye.
That's right. They didn't expect.
Well, have you heard the story of the Wilson plot?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in Spycatcher.
Aye,
So
I mean,
these people are capable of anything.
Corbyn's anti-war position was probably one of the biggest issues for him.
Exactly. Well, the array of alliances, I mean, the extent to which the British state is integrated in the US military, the Five Eyes, and with the Zionist state, is massive. And they couldn't allow that to become imperilled at all. Because
this is the most farcical election that we've probably ever witnessed. Would you agree?
it's the most insipid,
Yeah.
it's the most uninspiring. You think it was being waged with slippers on. There's lack of presence in the streets. It's been waged primarily in TV studios, with pre-arranged photo ops, curated public appearances, YouTube channels, social media. There's a lack of politics in the street, and I think people are turned off by it. As I said earlier, I think there'll be a historically low turnout. I wouldn't be surprised if it's down near around 50%. People don't have anybody to vote for. You've got a detached billionaire in Rishi Sunak. I do think there'll be a racial aspect here. I think there's a large swathe of this country that's not ready to have or entertain a Prime Minister with brown skin. And obviously his gaffe with the D-Day fiasco recently, it just feeds into that narrative that he's unpatriotic, he doesn't, you know, all that stuff. I mean, Farage ploughed that furrow in the immediate aftermath. I think the migrant crisis has turned into a material force in the hands of Farage and his Reform Party, and I think he will break through, unfortunately, and they will pull the Tories to the right after Sunak's departure, competing to see who can bash the migrants, the alien, other the most, trying to blame them from the problems caused by late stage capitalism and the billionaire class, who are the real enemy of working people. So punching down is the new punching up, and we're all beggared as a consequence, because our consciousness has been battered with these tropes, you know, on migrants, on Ukraine.
The question of the fact that the voter ID now is required, and there's a lot of people aren't even going to participate from that perspective as well. You know?
Yeah.
So they rely on
Well, that's a class issue in itself.
They rely on a reduced and apathetic electorate.
They rely on us to become more and more unengaged
Totally.
and apathetic, and we see our political class and our political culture as part of the entertainment industry increasingly, and it's who can entertain us. That was a key to Boris Johnson's success.
Yeah.
He was a character.
This question that I'm noticing, you know, I've been banging on this point for years and trying to make a sort of, to stop this kind of pretense of distinguishing between these people because of the different colours of the, you know, the political class of by and large, I would say.
And they're interchangeable. They're interchangeable.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Overton's window's never been smaller.
Yeah.
It's the war party. It's the business party. Whoever gets in. It's the pro-capitalist party, the pro-bankers party. There's nothing transformational. It's about who can manage the affairs of the bourgeoisie most efficiently. That's what they're vying for, and we are being conditioned to expect low expectations, to accept war is the normal state of existence in human affairs, and homelessness at home to be normalised. Was it over 2,000 food banks? And then yet there's still a large swathe of the working class who are feeling the iron boot of this horrible system that still doff their cap and love the royal family. What is it? Emma Goldman famously said, "Don't talk to me about the mass. The mass clings to its master, loves a whip, and is the first to cry, crucify." There's a lot of truth in that. When the people become a mob, you've got to distinguish between the people and the mob, and that's a difference in class consciousness. We've had this discussion before on various issues, Brexit, etc. There was a marked difference in the joyousness and the celebratory nature and the hope and the optimism of the pro-Scottish independence campaign in 2014 and this horrible, insular, inward-looking, exclusive Brexit campaign. So
I think even like the fact that these it's almost like, although these were our sort of recent memories in some respects, in terms of we've fallen so much further than even where we were at those points.
Yeah.
Then, there was still a sense, in some sense, that there was some sort of civic mobility or something that could be mustered against the inevitable kind of like the mincing machine.
Well, they've turned us from citizens into consumers, and everything's to be consumed and commodified, including our politics. And as I say, that the preponderance of YouTube channels. I mean, the left that does exist largely exists on YouTube channels and podcasts, and it's not, fair enough, but it's not connected to anything more substantive than that. It doesn't, we have to have people in the streets. We have to turn ourselves into a material force that can challenge the status quo and can challenge power. And there's preponderance of YouTube channels and people. It's dizzying because there's so many. So there's so much information being bandied about, but there's no connecting ideology about what's the solution. And you can talk about vague concepts, justice and peace and compassion. That's fine, but that just melts into air. We need material. We need material answers to the problems posed by the problems levelled on us by material reality of our existence.
It seems that the activist class, if you like, that are predominantly those that are often the most vocal, they're kind of just essentially looking to get a gig.
Aye, there's money.
They're looking to get a gig in politics or something along the line. It doesn't seem they don't seem to me to be focused on how they could raise class consciousness within the working class, so people that are not politically conscious.
Well, they don't have a presence in working class communities by and large. A lot of them are scared of working class people, because working class people can smell bullshit when they smell it, when they hear it, and they're scared to talk to working class people in a language that they can understand. I've always noticed a difference between your sort of middle class socialist and your working class variety. A difference in sense and sensibility, not to castigate or criticise, people who are in politics or try to make the world a better place, etc. Good for them, but I've always felt that the middle class variety approached the working class, along the lines of Rossi's classic noble savage formulation. Almost like the pets.
No, I mean, there's a total disconnect. There's obvious. I mean, somebody was interviewing me a couple of months ago, and they kind of made the point. I mean, they're a wee bit younger than me, and they do come from a more academic background, but they sort of made the point, like most of the middle class people that they knew, their only kind of interaction with working class people was in the sort of service industry, or when somebody came in to fix plumbing or something. And I was actually quite because my line of existence has always been in the arts and music.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, those boundaries are much more dissolved. You know what I mean? People from all kinds of different backgrounds and walks all my life. You know what I mean? So it never really occurred to me really. But then it sort of rung true, and I think that disconnect has got larger than it ever was really in some respects.
Even on the issue of this immigration crisis, I mean, obviously, you know, I abhor the way that these people are being othered and demonised and dehumanised and used as a political football by the political class. But there is also the other argument that there is a demand crisis for public services in large parts of the country because of the social weight of...
This is a conversation that those who are left are never comfortable having.
No, and so when I hear Alexis Stephen Flynn saying immigration is good for the country, what he really means is we're bringing people who will work for lower wages and they'll for profit extraction. They're being exploited when they come into the country.
Yeah.
So you've got to come out with much more clearly defined understanding of the issues facing working class communities. And just because working class people start to sort of raise their voice against the number of immigrants that are coming in and their communities are changing and so on, that doesn't make them out of the bounds of honest conversation.
There's no.
You know, if you've got a child and you can't get a place in a GP appointment, etc., that's a concern.
If you're part of the middle class left, though, there's no distinction. If you so much as utter any negative perspective on any of these situations, you are a racist, you are a xenophobe, you are a XYZ.
Well, it's not.
There's no sense of looking at any of those issues from any sort of, you know, wider thinking.
Yeah, if you're not going to invest in public services to meet the demand, then you're going to create social tensions. That's just a fact. But the people who are coming out with those arguments, they don't live in working class communities. They don't feel the consequences. So they have this kind of idealised view of society that's detached from the reality lived by most people, and certainly people who live in low-income working class communities. So they can dance on the head of that fucking pin. They can afford to. They're always going to have 3 square meals. They're always going to have school places for their kids. You know, again, all roads lead back to the issue of class and how we're bifurcated into 3 different cities. Look at Edinburgh. Edinburgh's like 3 cities in one. You know, you've got the bourgeoisie in the New Town and in Stockbridge and Morningside, etc. You've got the middle class trying to hang on to what they've got in lower class community, and then you've got fucking a wasteland in Niddrie and Pilton and Clovenstone and Saughton Mains, where I'm from. You think you're in a different country, not just a different city, a different country.
Well, I mean, Brad Welsh would often make the point that was kids in the schemes that have never even seen the castle. It's true for that. Why people are just not. You know, you'll get this sort of sanctimonious notions of like, oh, young people have got free bus travel and stuff like that. I said, no point in them going into town, they can't afford to get so much of a sandwich or something.
Well, they'll just have the plight of their existence reaffirmed when they go into town.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have a
surrounded by corn and the cobs and tourists.
It hardens your heart. I've lived it. I know what the inside of a pawn shop looks like. You know, when I was a wee laddie going in and get my mum's rings and so on, and it hardens your heart. You know, you think it's spirit crushing. You know, and that's what they want. You know, politics is by and large left the schemes, and all that's been left behind are the drug dealers and the preachers, and that's not enough.
How do you have any sense of where you could see, or do you think things are going to get a lot worse before they get better?
I believe in acceleration. I think this crisis has got to peak. People are going to have to wake up from their torpor and their slumber. People are going to have to start getting angry. Anger's a very positive emotion for an oppressed people, as long as it's pointed in the right direction.
Also take into consideration the Railway project is primarily a project of consciousness suppression, and it's a very effective one.
It works on huge.
The evidence is this is what we're in.
What was it, Althusser said, the dominant ideology screams at you every single day. You know, cultural references, billboards, advertising hoardings. You know,
and that's why I always felt like, well, that's why I really find these kind of really cheesy led by donkey stuff, and that it's just this plastic protest. You know, it's like, it's not. If we had some really effective detourment or something, you know what I mean, that was like much more kind of localised, much more. I mean, you always see it in Europe. You always see it in the context.
It's just there's a complete lack of militancy. There's a complete lack of militant thinking, a complete lack of really trying to get in between the gears of the system and stopping it. It's just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. as I say, you know, the people that headed these movements, you know, they get the status, they get the position. On a personal level, I think it's quite corrupting. I'm worried I don't see a new generation of leadership coming through that had the same level of radical politics and ideas and intention as the generation that I came from. The trade union movement is a simulacrum of what you would expect, given where we are. You would think there would be a calls for a general strike against genocide, given that we are a material actor in that genocide. But no, nothing. You know, the union cry is always workers should join the union, but I think we're at a stage where the union should join the workers, you know, and stand tall, you know, and stand up for them. Why are unions still investing in that fucking Labour Party? That's a lot. That party's been completely defenestrated and defanged of any left-wing politics, any idea of why it was founded in the first place.
Yeah, that's what I have to agree as well. I mean, I find those who are, you know, championing the Labour as, I don't know, get the Tories out. I just can't really get my head around this. You know what I mean? It's like with this changing of the neoliberal guard, it just seems utterly pointless. It's a fruitless exercise. And it's really quite insulting. You know, I find it quite insulting for those that seem to sort of consider themselves to be politically astute or otherwise. Well, advocating this, it's bankrupt. It's completely.
I know. It's just they're taking us for fools now. They're just handing over the corridors of power are changing, but it's the same people in power. The only thing that will change in Downing Street, meaningful, if Starmer gets in, is the colour of the curtains on the windows. It'll be pro-war, pro-business. What's pro-growth if not pro-business? It's not pro-redistribution of wealth. It's not pro-equality. You know, it's the status quo, anti again, despite things falling apart in front of our eyes. You know, so that's why they need to have this external enemy. They need to have Putin to scare the kids at home, kind of thing, the bogeyman. They need to try and wave the flag, because the flag covers the lack of serious politics and serious solutions to the answers of the 21st century, or the challenge of the 21st century. That's where we are now. It's debased, it's degenerate, and it's intellectually shallow. No mention of capitalism from anyone in this political campaign.
Well, that is the elephant, the perpetual elephant in the room, isn't it?
Well, the climate crisis, the migration crisis, the war in Ukraine, the genocidal slaughter in Gaza, you know, the huge deepening levels of poverty and so on, and social ills. What connects them all?
Capitalism. Yeah, totally. What's your intentions for the vote, if any? Are you going to participate in any form? Are you spoiling your ballot?
I'll spoil my ballot.
Is that the first time you've ever done that?
Yes. Yeah. It's the first time I've ever done that.
I think it's significant. I got a lot of us doing that one, but it's like, you know, it's like literally,
Aye.
you know, this is. I mean, I think I've always felt that it's important to participate. You know what I mean, it's important to vote.
Yeah.
But to make your statement there, you know what I mean? Because I mean, I remember even when I've stood myself, people might not be aware of that, but they do have to go through all the ballots.
Well, I believe that if you're going to spoil your ballot, just for people watching, you have to put it in one of the boxes. You have to put your message, or it will just be discarded. It will not go up on the screen.
Right. I didn't know that. Because when I ran, they have actually all the ballots. I saw them all. Like,
all right.
I mean, yeah, there was definitely, like, whether it was a phallus or whatever was there. Like, you know what I mean? But it was quite amusing checking. Like, you know what I mean? That probably the most entertaining aspect of the whole thing, to be honest. I was watching the spoil, but I'm watching them compete for them. You know.
What do you think of the independents' chances of breaking through on the issue of Gaza?
Independents themselves.
Like George Galloway's party, and also the other.
I think that there's. I think that there's places where that will, like Northern England and places like that. I think there's places where that will be the case. That we might see some.
I mean, my cynical side says that, you know, I think for a lot of people the issue of Gaza is diminished in importance. We've mentioned that, and it's become a backdrop because it's been going on for so long.
Yeah.
And the words Palestinian and killed now do belong in the same sentence in people's consciousness. You know, they're used to seeing that, they're hearing it. Unfortunately, they become desensitised. I think if the election was happening a few months earlier, maybe with the height of the moral outrage around this issue. But I hope some of the candidates get through on the issue of Gaza. but the establishments may try to curate it as a Muslim issue at home, talking about hate marches and so on. Galloway's he mounted a commendable attempt to challenge. I think he's fielding 152 candidates.
Yeah, I think that's true, and also, but like I said, I mean, I've tweeted about it and what have you, but I think the hostility towards Galloway by sections of the bourgeois left just exposes them for the fifth columnists that they actually are. To be honest, that's how I see that. If you can't, if we've reached a stage where it's like there's no, we're watching the daily quotidian massacre, obliteration, annihilation of human beings on a scale that we never really thought that we would ever be witness to, and part of that, ironically, is communicative capitalism that's provided us with that, that vista, I suppose, which is disturbing in itself in terms of where we're at. There's wider questions to ponder on all of that. Without that, we wouldn't know what is actually occurring in that sense. And the fact that this is the backdrop to it, and
well, this is where
you would have thought that areas of that left would have known that this is the time to park these kind of petty.
This is where I think a lot of the drive came from behind that was behind Aaron Bushnell's supreme sacrifice, the frustration that there was no solid opposition to this genocide and this carnage being supported by his own ruling class. I think he was sending us all a message, actually, what he's going to do now. He did lay down a kind of gauntlet for us and for future generations, and I don't think we've lived up to his sacrifice. Well, clearly we haven't. Now, there has been militancy in the US with these college campuses. That's done good. That has shifted the dial over there, I think, politically, somewhat, not enough. Over there, obviously, you've got a kind of declining days of the Roman Empire scenario, where you've got Biden as Emperor Claudius, and you've got Emperor Nero looking to succeed him in the form of Trump. One's got early stage fascism, one other one's got early stage rigor mortis. I mean, it's a gerontocracy, redolent of the dying days of Rome. I think Trump's got a high chance of winning that election. I can't believe the Democrats think that Biden is suitable to go forward.
Like a cadaver that's reanimated.
They'd have to wind him up every morning. Sad. It's sad. But I think it's a perfect metaphor for where American politics are. It's a mess over there, an absolute mess. We are following close behind in the UK. So yeah, I have serious concerns of where we're going. I see a lot of parallels between the Weimar Republic and the UK today. The sense of nothing works anymore. It's either party until it's 1999 on one side, just lose yourself in hedonism and sexual politics and all these kind of hedonistic pursuits, and then meanwhile creeping up is the populist right, and the centre's being squeezed.
I think that's a really important thing as well, especially in terms of the way that they sort of those kind of bourgeois identity politics have manifested in the culture over the last decade as well, in terms of we've had that whole idea with the Creative Scotland scandal and that, which is a perfect example of that, where you've got these indulgent middle class artists who at a time like this where people can barely feed themselves, where there's all these kind of crises occurring, that the most interesting thing that they could think of to do is to go and fist each other in a cave and film it, and claim that this was some grand victory for conceptual art. It's a decadent, disgusting affront to people that are struggling.
Peak middle class extremism in the wrong way. That was an absolute scandal. I just think that's redolent of how the debased the SNP have become. They've turned inward, fat on power, complacent, and believing that they own Scotland. They've done their best to lower our expectation when it comes to independence. Independence in Scotland will never be won in the election booth. The British establishment will not make that mistake again. It's going to be in the streets, and I don't see an appetite for it in the streets. I think people have become so nullified by the political process, so sheepified by the political process, that they're looking for personal solutions to problems that require a collective response.
Totally. John, just tell us where we can get the book.
On Watchman's website, Amazon of course, various bookshops around the country. It's in paperback, it's in hardback, it's on ebook, and I'll keep you posted about the event.
Let me know when you're going to do that.
And we'll do stuff.
And we'll try and do another wee chat before for the election.
For sure, we should, yeah, sure.
Nice one, thanks
All right,
for
mate,
coming in.
take care,
Cheers,
thanks a
John.
lot, cheers.